The era of US dollar dominance is over, as outlined in a recent interview by Russian President Vladimir Putin. What can we learn from this impending collapse, and how can you best protect yourself? I'm Kenney with ITM Trading, and this is Tailor-Made Economics. While many of you have probably watched or heard about Tucker Carlson's recent interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin, there is still so much to break down when it comes to Putin's claims surrounding the weaponization of and subsequent failure of the US dollar, including his most unfiltered thoughts on recent United States actions. We'll share that particular moment later, along with how you can follow in other countries' footsteps to best protect yourself. But first, let's start with perception around the US dollar's dominance. It's no secret that the US dollar has long wielded significant power and influence. As the world's global reserve currency, the United States has had a very privileged position, as Putin himself explains.
What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? It is about the emission. Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power.
When talking about emission, Putin is essentially saying that the United States has been able to print money and rack up exorbitant amounts of debt with little to no consequences thanks to a never-ending demand. That is, up until recently. Political decisions such as sanctions have actually decreased the demand for US dollars, meaning that the United States will no longer be able to print and run rampant with a debt accumulation cycle with no consequences. Putin goes on to elaborate that it's not just Russia where this decreased demand is occurring, but rather a much larger scale.
Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world.
It's true. The impact of these sanctions are unmistakable. The demand for US dollar is not only declining, it's plummeting. Countries across the globe are unloading their US reserves in an attempt to protect themselves from a similar predicament. This underscores the urgent need that countries have to safeguard against the imminent decline of the dollar. Now, US government officials have said that this scenario would never be plausible, it would never happen, that demand for US dollar and US reserves would always remain steadfast. However, current events demonstrate otherwise. Vladimir Putin himself goes on to give an example of how Russia was able to use a different currency in lieu of the dollar. This example shows how the world is quickly adapting to a post-dollar era.
Our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%. Today, 34% of our transactions are made in rubles, and about as much, a little over 34% in yuan. Why did the United States do this? My only guess is self-conceit.
Full collapse did not happen. Instead, these successful changes highlighted a rapidly evolving new global world order, where countries are no longer guessing if they can move away from dollar reliance and instead are just taking the steps to do so. It also prompts the crucial question: if other countries are distancing themselves from the US dollar, shouldn't we be doing the same thing? And with a rollout of a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, are we really to believe that the US government would not exert control over us the way that they have already with the US dollar and other countries? It is a fact that central banks around the world are protecting themselves by ditching the dollar and stockpiling as much gold as possible, because we know that gold can't be manipulated, it can't be frozen overseas or in your bank account, and it sure can't fail because of some poor political decisions. So what are Putin's unfiltered real thoughts on the United States exposing its vulnerability and ushering in the dollar's collapse?
I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do, and a grave mistake.
The message is clear. The days of dollar dominance are numbered. It's time to take matters into your own hands and protect your own financial future, which is why I personally shield my financial wealth with gold and silver. If you want to understand how you can get a strategy in place that protects you outside of the system, away from dollar-denominated assets, click the Calendly link below, talk to one of our expert analysts, and get a strategy in place that makes sense for you today. You'll be glad you did it. Thank you so much for being here with me today. As always, I'm Taylor Kenney with ITM Trading. Until next time.